Listening to podcasts is no replacement for real training. While we attempt to provide accurate commentary, we hold no responsibility on how you use the information we provide. Get medical training. In the blink of an eye, everyday order can be replaced with once-in-a-lifetime chaos. Be prepared. This is the Civilian Medical Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Civilian Medical Podcast. My name is Dietrich. I've got my good buddy and co-host here, Sean.
I'm here.
You're there. You're a little cold, and it's like 70 degrees here in the wintertime. I'm doing air quotes there in South Carolina.
It is actually colder in our studio than it is outside, I think. I don't know how that's possible, but we have done this. We've created this.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm kind of excited about this one. Dietrich, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest real quick?
Yeah. So we work a lot with TacMed Solutions, the company, Tactical Medical Solutions. They're a local company to me. They're in South Carolina. And we work a lot with them. They have some great products. So I reached out to them and said, hey, look, we'd love to have somebody come on and talk to us. And they gave me Dan's contact, and Dan's coming on the show today. And I talked to him this morning for a while, and he's a really cool guy. He's done some cool stuff and is doing some cool stuff at Tactical Med Solutions.
Awesome. Dan, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Kind of how did you get into medical, and how did you go to TacMed Solutions?
Great. Thank you very much, guys, for the invitation. I follow you guys and see your videos online, and you all are doing some really awesome stuff. So I'm very grateful to be here and looking forward to doing this with you. My name's Dan Stout, and I joined Tactical Medical Solutions formally in a full-time capacity in October of 2018. Prior to that, I grew up in Gainesville, Florida, went to college for a year, got bored, and decided I would enlist in the Marine Corps Reserve, and did 6 years in the Marine Corps Reserve while I finished school. Never did anything exciting, never deployed, but lots of toys for tots and drill weekends, and it was a great experience and did nothing but benefit me throughout my career. My wife and I both served for 25 years at the Gainesville Police Department there in Florida, and I spent the bulk of my time in patrol and training, did the different promotional processes and things like that. And my wife and I both retired in September of 2018 as lieutenants. And let me just go ahead and get the obvious out of the way. I was a lieutenant. My first name's Dan, so yes, I do go by Lieutenant Dan. Have fun with that.
Perfect.
Yes. So specifically how I got into medicine, I was on our SWAT team at the time, and just like the vast majority of SWAT teams across the country, it was a part-time team. You're patrol, you're a detective, you're officer friendly, you're whatever, until back then the pager went off. Nowadays it's cell phones, but back then it was the pager, and suddenly you became a part of the SWAT team. Well, I was on the SWAT team in October of 1999 when the Columbine High School incident went down. And obviously that was in Colorado. I was in Florida. I did not have a personal connection to it, didn't know anybody involved, but I was professionally connected to it and had to do a true gut assessment of what my personal capabilities were. And I have told people many, many times over the years, you could have picked up Columbine, sat it down anywhere in the United States, and the outcome was going to be the same, because that's just the way we were all training. It was the playbook that we were all using at the time, and we wouldn't have done anything any different, and the outcome would not have been any better had it happened in Gainesville, Florida. And that's where active shooter came from. It's where direct to threat came from. It's where the idea of teaching medicine to law enforcement came from, because that was the part to me that really stuck out. There's a very famous photo or news clip from one of the news helicopters where they zoomed in and the kids were holding up poster boards where they had scribbled on the backside, were bleeding to death and things like that. And it just made me do my own self-assessment, and I knew I wouldn't have done any better. So that January, a month or two later, I started EMT school, working full-time, and found out, number one, I liked it. Found out, number two, I had some aptitude for it. So I just continued on and stood on my head, and from 2000 to 2003, cross-trained as a paramedic. 9/11 happened during that time, and it opened up a lot of opportunities for us to train with federal and military partners and intelligence community partners that we would have never, ever had access to prior to 9/11. Just was not on our radar. Global war on terror, was not part of my job description back then. So again, I got to go to some really good military schools, some good tactical schools, and blending of the civilian medical training along with the military training was key. And I served in that SWAT medic capacity for 14 years there at the Gainesville Police Department. I worked part-time for a training company that assisted the military with combat lifesaver training for pre-deployment spool-ups and things of that nature. So I would get to go off 3-5 times a year for a week at a time and help units go through their 40 hours of combat lifesaver training. And that was a huge, huge benefit to me professionally, to just keep in touch with what was going on in that space. And I learned every time I went off and did that, I learned more probably than I taught. So it was very humbling to be in their midst and get to learn from them. And especially as the years went on, there were a couple of repeat units, folks that were heading out for their second and even their third deployment. So we were able to debrief them and find out, what's working, what's not working, what do you think, that type of thing. So that's what I was able to do professionally in the space of tactical medicine. And throughout my career, I used Tactical Medical Solutions products. That's what we used at my agency. And so I had a really good working relationship with this company. And when the opportunity came for me to come here full time, instead of going into the drop, my wife and I bounced. And I came here full time, and my wife is back being the police up at the Greenville Police Department. So she stayed retired for about 4 months and missed it. So she is back, still serving in that capacity, but I'm here doing this here at Tactical Medical Solutions.
Very cool. What's your job title there?
I am a training and sales consultant, and my region that I cover is the Gulf states. So Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. Mainly with a focus on Florida, just because population density, but that's also where I'm from. So I still try to hit all of the states as best I can, but that's the area that I cover. And every once in a while I get sent out to do special trainings or special missions somewhere else and things of that nature. But my focus is still primarily the Southeast.
Man, I'm super jealous of the cross training of the paramedics, police officer role. I worked for Greenville County for a long time, and they had some officers now that are cross-trained. And two of my buddies that were full-time paramedics went over to Greenville County to be full-time paramedic / police officers. So that's a cool role that you can be in the community serving in a lot of different roles and capacities. So I think that's pretty cool.
It was a blessing. Right after that, there was a lot of discussions about, how are we going to go about doing this? Do we train police officers to be medics? Do we train medics to be police officers? And then, of course, always the fun and famous question, well, who's going to pay for it?
Yes.
What budget is it going to come out of? And
who's going to pay my salary? That's what I want to know.
And it seems like TEMS, tactical medical, whatever you want to call it these days, we make some progress and then we go backwards, and we make some progress and we go backwards. It has been a long uphill battle, but it's been very rewarding to see agencies across the country adopt programs, develop their capabilities, and, to now find an agency that doesn't have some type of capability, that's the unicorn. It used to be, inverted. It used to be, 90% of the departments weren't doing something. And it's good to see that agencies have come around and are being very professional and diligent in that capability.
Yeah, that's kind of my role now in EMS. We have a TIMS team, and we support several agencies. So most of them are our smaller agencies, a lot of city agencies that we can kind of come in and support. We're not armed, we're not police officers, but we're there in the front yard, staging where EMS, the ambulance is 2 miles away. We're 50 feet from them. So are closer than that sometimes, but it's pretty cool to see that come about. And like you said, I agree 100%, especially starting a TIMS team like we did. It's you start trying to build those relationships up, and then something happens, and you try to take one step back, but then you take 2 steps forward. So it's definitely cool. And I love training the police officers on how to provide first aid, training the police officers on how to do CPR, how to work an AED, because they may be closer to the ambulance, maybe closer than the fire department, so they can start providing that immediately life-threatening injury, whether it be someone in cardiac arrest that needs chest compressions or they need to apply a tourniquet to the victim. So I love doing that part of the training aspect of it.
Yeah, I did a lot of teaching at the basic police recruit level, and I would walk in and I'd give my intro where I explain who I was, what my background was, and then one of the questions I'd always ask was, okay, who here came to the police academy to become an EMT? Raise your hand. And they just kind of sit there and stare at me. And I said, okay, I get it. But guess what? You're not necessarily going to be a paramedic. You're not necessarily going to be an EMT, but you are going to be a first responder. And in the state of Florida, the sections that are referred to as, quotes, high liability, there's 4: defensive tactics, firearms, driving, and, quotes, first aid. I said, so, the 4 most important things are lumped together. And I know you all came here to learn how to shoot, drive fast, and, do Taekwondo. All right.
Yes.
But this other component is still one of our core missions. And I said, you need to be proficient in all of them. All right. So you may like one over the other. I said, but it is your job. It is your duty. We all raised our hand and we took an oath. I support and defend and all of that kind of good stuff. That famous quote on the front of every police car, to serve and protect. All right. We are here to serve and protect. And it is not acceptable for us to stand around and, quotes, wait for the ambulance to get there and allow time to click off the clock. I said, you have been trained. You have been given equipment. Now, I will say that has greatly improved over the years. The training, the equipment that officers are being issued is much better. When I first started, the extent of the equipment that I was issued was a little white OSHA first aid kit in a little metal box that was in the trunk. And, most of them were still wrapped in cellophane and had never been opened. It had a bee sting kit in it, some Band-Aids that wouldn't stick, an ammonia inhalant capsule, and, things of that nature. I told people the only way that thing was going to save your life is if you managed to beat your attacker over the head with a metal box. There was nothing in it that was going to save a life. It was truly a first aid kit. So it has been a massive leap forward as far as the training, as far as the equipment that's been given to police officers. So they are in a much better position now to render that life-saving aid. And I was very honored to be a part of that and help train up the next generations of police officers that are out there doing the job, and to take a step back and watch them now. They are getting it. They do understand. Yeah, that might not be the part of the job that got them into police work, but once they've been on a call and once they have been a part of a save, a part of a rescue, a part of a resuscitation, whatever you want to refer to it as, that's when it really clicks to them that, okay, this is really important. Yeah, I like to catch burglars, and I like to, take drug dealers off the road and all of those kind of fun things. But being able to help render aid and save a life is pretty amazing as well.
Yeah, I was doing training one time, and this guy, we were doing some SWAT training, and I didn't know the officer. And he's all decked out in his OD green, turtle suit, helmet, pads on his whole thing. So I'm sitting there, and he's looking all tactical. And I was probably in like a polo shirt, nothing super tactical. And the guy's like, hey, just want to let you know that I really appreciate your videos. They help me out a lot. And I was like, okay, cool. I appreciate that. So he's like, I don't want to be an EMT, but I want to be able to help somebody just in case. I'm like, yeah, perfect. That's exactly what, we want from you guys is, you may not be, you all got to be a police officer because you want to, mostly you want to punch somebody in the face probably, but you want to help people. But this is part of it. Like you were saying, you may be there because they're having a bad day, but you're able to help them in other capacities too. So yeah, I think it's a cool role, and you're finally seeing that more dual role across the country for police officers to be some kind of medically trained. And thank goodness now you guys have better first aid kits in the back of your car. I've given a lot of stuff away to police officers, just because maybe their department still doesn't issue them a full kit. Maybe they have a tourniquet on their ankle or a tourniquet in their holster on their belt. But I've given a lot of stuff away. I'm like, hey, here's a tourniquet. Here's how to use it. Stash it away so you can have it.
Yeah,
absolutely. And yes, having the equipment is key, but also, knowing what to do with it, when, how, where, etc., is also vital as well, because there's plenty of equipment that police departments issue out to their folks, and it sits in a closet, it sits in the trunk, the abyss that is known as the trunk of a police car, and it never comes out except for inspections and accreditation. But when they're absolutely committed to it and they're wearing it on their person, they've got their equipment on themselves for themselves. They've got their kits for their brothers and sisters and the general public, and all the way up to now mass casualty, rescue task force type capabilities. That's what I like to see, is when they're involved in a really robust program and there's buy-in from the street level up. It's not just something that's been pushed down by the chief or the sheriff, but the folks that are out there on midnight shift doing the job, when they've embraced it, that's an amazing program.
Definitely. So how did TACMed Solutions get started?
So our CEO, his name is Ross Johnson. He was part of the United States Army Special Forces community all the way up to being a part of Delta Force. And he was serving a deployment in Afghanistan and went to use a piece of equipment that was issued to him by the Army at the time, and it failed. It did not work the way that it was supposed to, and he basically spent the rest of that deployment developing several items. The two main things that he came up with were the Special Operations Forces tourniquet and the Elias trauma bandage. And it's actually really cool if you ever get a chance to come here to our headquarters. He sketched it out, and he's got those framed. But then he also went through like the trash piles and things like that, and begged, borrowed, and steeled and glued and sewed things together to make the very first like 3D renderings of what he thought they should look like. And he's actually got those framed here in the hallways as well. So that's actually kind of cool to see what he came up with. Like the windlass on the model is a piece of PVC pipe that he carved in just nylon and random pieces that he sewed and stitched together to get it off of a piece of paper and actually into a 3D working. You could see where his mind was going when he was developing this thing. So to see it come from those sketches to these trash pile models all the way through to the generations that we're dealing with now, kind of a neat evolution of the tourniquet.
Yeah, that's
definitely. And there's a story behind the Elias bandage too, correct? Like the name, how it got its name.
There is. So there's a lot of bandages out there that have very tactical names, or very, Alpha bandage, Bravo bandage, whatever. There's a nomenclature to it, and it's just very specific to about what it does or things like that. To me, this bandage is pretty impressive because it is the Elias bandage. There's a name attached to it, and that is named after Sergeant Elias, who was Ross's junior medic that was killed in Afghanistan. And the other interesting factor behind that is Ross has no personal ties to this area, meaning Anderson, South Carolina. But this is where Sergeant Elias grew up, and this is where his family is at, and that's why this company is based here.
I did not know that part of it.
Pretty amazing stuff. And to me, we haven't lost sight of the medic in the ditch that's trying to do this job, or the first responder that's out there on midnight shift on the side of the road trying to do the job. It's still in touch with, still in relationship with that line level that's out there. So every one of these things that goes out, there's some pretty important meaning behind that going out the door, and that's why I like being here.
Yeah, it's pretty huge. I had a couple things, Elias.
Can I stop y'all real quick on that?
Yeah.
I'm not sure Ross wants that public.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Meaning the story behind the Elias and why it's named the Elias. Let me get permission from him for you to use that little segment that I just gave you.
Okay.
Okay.
He and you'll understand this, I think. He doesn't want that used as a marketing tactic. It really does mean something to him. So he actually reserves and restricts that story.
Okay.
So if he gives me the green light for you all to include that, I'll let you know. But if he says he doesn't want that included as part of this, if you all would take that out, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. No problem at all, man.
Yeah, I knew about the name, but I didn't know that the medic was from Anderson. That's why he started brought the business here. So I didn't know that part of it.
Yeah, there's actually a captain over at the Oconee County Sheriff's Office. We donated some equipment over there, and I went to hand it off and do some training with him. And he started getting teary-eyed. I'm like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Well, I grew up with Sergeant Elias and played Little League baseball with him for years." You know, so yeah, there's definitely some very local personal connections, and that just speaks volumes to Ross and the way he thinks.
Good stuff.
Okay. Yeah, we can edit that if we need to. Just let me know. I'll let Sean know.
Yeah, sure. I'll get a green light or a red light on that, and I will follow back up with you and let you know.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. So yeah, the Elias, I actually had no idea how to say it. So when you said it, a little light bulb.
Yeah, we've gotten definitely some Olays, a lot. Yeah, there's definitely some interesting pronunciations of it, but it's actually Elias.
That's good stuff. It is actually my favorite compression bandage. I've got a bunch of them, and I have them in just about every kit that they'll fit in.
They are definitely a useful bandage.
There's a lot of bandages out there, and a lot of them are really good at what they do and what they were intended to do, but they're very linear or one scope. And jokingly, we like to refer to the Elias bandages, the quotes ShamWow of trauma bandages. But wait, there's more.
Yes.
You can use it. Just as that straight out of the package, white puffy side goes down to the injury. Round and round and round, create the compression and bandage it up. But, when you can open it up and take the gauze out and use the gauze for wound packing, that's pretty versatile. That comes with the sheet of visqueen inside that you can MacGyver an occlusive dressing with. And even the pressure cup that's on the outside, you can cut it off and use it as an improvised eye cup. So like I said, the versatility of the bandage and being able to have the ability to get out of the standard packaging and do other things with it, I think is a pretty cool key.
Absolutely. And price is ridiculous too. Like it's $7 or something like that.
Yeah. And right around in that price range. Yes, sir. It is affordable. 8-year shelf life, as long as it's vacuum sealed. So you get a good long shelf life out of it. And, it works very well. I've used it effectively, real world treatments on the side of the road, and it's always been an effective piece of gear for me.
Yeah, I have a 6-inch in my SWAT bag, my backpack that I keep. So I keep one of those bandages there.
Yeah, we've got a 4-inch rolled, a 6-inch rolled, and a 4-inch what we call flat pack. So
that's the one I have. I like that one.
To get something to fit in a certain IFAC or a certain piece of nylon or a certain backpack. Sometimes the flat pack works better than the rolled. So there's different options out there for packaging.
And then we can kind of talk about the soft tee a little bit if you want to. I like the soft tee. Sure. It's come through a bunch of generations. The latest generation with the track system, I like it. I like the track system. I think it made it comparable to other tourniquets on the market to make it easier for one-handed application. I keep
feedback we've gotten over the years is, the soft tee tourniquet works great, especially if you're putting it on someone else. But, it's just been a little bit more difficult to do the self one-handed application. And I definitely think the redesign, the lengthening and the skinning of the windlass and the addition of the track, has definitely helped level that playing field a little bit to make the one-handed application much easier.
Yeah, it definitely is, and the price on that's pretty great too. I would be very curious to see the pictures or to even see in person, kind of the old iterations. Like I love stuff like that material engineering.
When I first started, it was the Gen 1, which had the really big stainless steel, silver-colored windlass. It was the 1-inch, band and the alligator clip with the thumb screw. And it was the itty-bitty thumb screw, too, not the big fat one that you could find a little easier. And then the Gen 2, they got the windlass shrunk down a little bit, made it black. It was still the alligator clip, still the 1-inch constricting band, but then they made the thumb screw much fatter, so under stress and gross motor skills you could find it a little easier. And it has been cool to watch the generation come through, and there are still, believe it or not, especially some of our European allies that still prefer the older version with the alligator clip. We're on Gen 4 now, which has a 1.5-inch constricting band and a more of an aviation style slip buckle. The alligator clip is no longer there. The thumb screw is no longer there. So it's been neat to see some of the changes and iterations that have come out of it.
Yeah, I have one of the old Gen 2s because it has the fatter thumb screw. So I still have one of those that we have in our training pile just to kind of show the progression of the soft T. But yeah, the Gen 4 soft T, the buckle is smoother, I feel like, for that one-hand application. I think the webbing flows through it better. And then I've always struggled with getting, on a one-hand application, getting the windlass into the triangle. And I admitted plenty of times that it's a training issue, that, if I just need to buckle down and train with, putting my hands on it better. And so then when you guys came out with the track system, I was like, this is perfect. I can use this as an assist to kind of help me get it locked into the triangle better. So when the assist came out, I was like, this is it. This is a much better tourniquet. I feel like, and it made big leaps for me.
Yeah, absent the track, in the older generations, once you, twisted the windlass and you got occlusion and, okay, it was time to anchor the end of the windlass off into the tri-ring, you kind of had to hold it in line and pull off this one-fingered ninja move to try to get the anchor in place. And that was the point where everybody said, okay, this is a little challenging at times. So, again, skinnying up the windlass, lengthening it out, and then the addition of the actual clip. And it's not intended to be an anchor point. It's meant to be that temporary assist where you can drop it down in. It will hold it in place. You can completely let go and now have, all 4 of your fingers, your thumb, the palm of your hand, whatever you got left up there to be able to manipulate, finally anchoring the end of that windlass off into the tri-ring. So that has been an overwhelmingly positive modification to the tourniquet as it's evolved over time. Now, I do want to address one thing that has come up in conversation. We did have an issue with a couple of lots, meaning where we would run tourniquets through the factory and they were manufactured and boxed and sent out. We did have a very, very small issue with a couple of lots that were manufactured back in the spring of 2018. And what I mean by that is the tracks were breaking. And what we found was that during some training evolutions, especially in repeated uses where the tourniquets were taken to full occlusion, taken off, taken to full occlusion, taken off, those tracks were fatiguing and snapping under tension. And just plain blunt English, nobody likes to hear about something breaking, and that's us included. There's a lot invested, in this tourniquet, a lot of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears put into this thing. And nobody ever wants to hear that, hey, there was an issue with this. So what we did is we went back, we figured out what was going on. It was a chemistry issue that was happening at the manufacturing level. And it was restricted, again, to just a handful of lots. We identified those. As they've been brought to our attention, we have replaced those. And then more importantly, we went back, looked at the track, did some redesign of the chemistry, some redesign of the actual manufacturing procedure, and implemented a bunch of different tests, now 5 additional tests that we weren't even running before, to make sure that that never happens again. And we're very pleased with the result that has come out of that. And once that got identified and addressed, we have not had any further issues of that happening. We have identified where some of them went and have proactively reached out to the people and replaced them. Again, if folks call us, if folks email us and tell us, hey, my track broke, we deal with them individually. We let some of our distributors know, hey, we think these lots went through you guys and you sold these to this end customer, and we're addressing it that way. So we're trying to make that part of it right to those that received the ones that were defective and not working appropriately. And I think we've resolved that pretty faithfully and pretty directly. And again, the redesign of the chemistry and the way it was being manufactured more than adequately, more than satisfactory, took care of that issue, and it's not happening anymore.
Yeah, I hadn't heard or seen any of that, but I mean, and that's really, like, mistakes happen, right? Sometimes things happen.
Absolutely.
It's how we respond to it, and it's how we make up for it.
And again, it was still very, very small numbers, even in those affected lots. But to us, one is too many. And we want to make sure that that's not happening. And I'm very proud to be able to go out and say, you know what, we had an issue. It got identified. We tried to make it right with the ones that were affected by it. And we have corrected the issue and no longer having that problem with the track. And again, the response to this tourniquet has been overwhelmingly positive, and both domestically and internationally, they're doing very, very well.
Yeah, I saw a couple pictures pop up. Somebody posted a picture on my Skinny Medic Facebook group, and then I was in another group that saw another picture. So it may have been the same picture. I don't remember right offhand, but so that's why I asked you. But yeah, I appreciate you addressing it and, like I said, fixing it. Like, I love the soft T. I think it made this Gen 4 made big adjustments. I carry a cat on my vest, and then also carry a soft T. So I carry the cat on the outside, and the soft T is inside my IFAC as my secondary tourniquet. So I think the Gen 4 has made big improvements, and it's a good tourniquet.
Well, we appreciate that, and thank you for your support and helping us continue to expand what we're doing and try to reach people and get our equipment in front of them.
Now, we talked
about advantage I wanted to mention if you had some time still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the soft T one more second, and we talked about there's not a huge problem with knockoffs of the soft T, but there's always that possibility. So we kind of talked about earlier this morning, making sure that you're still buying either from TacMed Solutions or buying from one of their distributors.
Yes, and I'm going to be blunt. Whether you're trying to buy a soft T tourniquet or you want to buy a cat tourniquet, you need to buy directly from the manufacturer or one of their reputable distributors from their online store. I would personally, and I know there are good people that sell things out there on Amazon, but you are running a risk. And what I would advise people is, if the deal seems just too good to be true, then it's too good to be true. Yep. If you're getting 2 tourniquets for $15, chances are you're not getting an authentic piece of equipment. And I've actually heard some people say, well, they're okay for training. And that just makes my stomach turn when I hear people say something like that, because that's how things make it into operational stores and operational packs. If somebody takes it out of a training day or something like that, make sure that the equipment you're buying is bona fide, authorized, et cetera, et cetera. So just make sure you know where you're buying your equipment from. And yes, we all love to get a good deal, but if the deal is too good to be true, then it's not the real thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll say Medical Gear Outfitters is a distributor. I don't know if we're a reputable distributor for TacMed Solutions, but we are a distributor for TacMed Solutions. So I'll do a cheap plug there.
I would tell anybody that's out there to buy equipment through you guys.
What did you guys think, Dan, of the recommendations that just came out from the Committee for TCCC in the last few months? Not only did your older version fare well, but your Gen 4 fared really well too.
Well, I know there's, like any other industry, there's always going to be somebody trying to step up and get in part of that market, whether it's a car, whether it's a firearm, whether it's a baton. So why would the medical space be any different? Historically, it's either been North American Rescue with the CAT, or Tactical Medical Solutions with the Soft T. So there are a lot of other tourniquets starting to enter the space. I would still go with, tried and true. We've been around a good long while, very reputable, very successful, good success rates with the actual real world deployments. So, going with something that's been out there for a long time and continues to improve from generation to generation versus something that's just now entering the space and hasn't been proven yet in a real world condition, that I would stick with something that's tried and true.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. The
other bandage.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the blast bandage. And I'll be honest, this is something that I never personally worked with and only saw it once I got here to Tactical Medical Solutions. And I just kind of sat there and stared at it. I'm like, where was this on this call that I worked, with amputated limbs? Because it was an absolutely phenomenal bandage. It's called a blast bandage. The Elias bandage comes kind of in a light tan. This is the one that's in a dark brown wrapper. And it's actually been adopted by the Marine Corps, and Marines and Navy Corpsmen are now carrying it in their IFACs and in their gear. And it comes out of the package, and you can roll it out and use it similarly to the way an Elias comes out. If you're out of Elias bandages, once you open the blast bandage, you can open it up and put the white part down to the injury, wrap it around, and anchor it down. The key feature for this thing, though, is it's folded in quadrants. And once you unfold it, you get a very, very large, like 12-inch by 12-inch panel of white cloth. And it comes with a very, very large sheet of visqueen, just like the Elias has a sheet of visqueen in it that's very, very small. This one is the same size as the white cloth of the bandage itself. And you can use it for burns. You can use it for eviscerations. You can use it to encapsulate the end of an amputated limb. And that was the one application that, as soon as I saw it, was playing around with it back here, I was like, man, I dealt with a bilateral amputation. It was pretty messy. It was pretty gory, and we had to MacGyver, as I've said, some bandages to try and address that. And this would have just been the simplest way to encapsulate the end of that limb and bandage it, and would have made my job much easier that night. I think it's an awesome bandage. It's very versatile. So I would encourage folks, if you haven't seen one, go to the website, check out the pictures. It's a cool piece of kit, and the same price point as the Elias bandage. It's not going to break the bank.
Very cool. Well, Skinny, you've talked about that one before.
Yeah, I did a video on it back a while back, and we just, for a reason, didn't pick up to carry it in our store. But it opens up really big, so to kind of cover up that stump would be a great application of it. Sometimes maybe it's just a nasty wound that you need to cover up and get the bleeding control. It doesn't necessarily need a tourniquet. It's just nasty looking, and which happens. You need to cover some stuff up. So it's a pretty cool bandage. It's not that bulky. It could go easily into a vehicle kit, a backpack, things like that. So it's a cool bandage to take a look at.
Yeah, very cool. What other products are worth mentioning? I mean, you guys have a ton of stuff, tons of great kits and things like that. What are some of your faves?
So I'll mention, still in the law enforcement, first responder space, I'll mention two more things. One is our ARC, Active Response Kit, and it is a backpack configuration that has individual pieces of equipment carried in the outside pockets. Enough equipment for the wearer to use and treat up to about four critical casualties, I would estimate. So a pretty decent amount of equipment for the person carrying the bag to utilize. Two things can go down the center compartment: 8 additional throw kits or a rolled foxtrot litter. And I'll talk about that one here in a minute. But as far as the throw kits goes, so basically say you've got, an active shooter in a bar, okay? And you've got many casualties down. At my old agency, we had what was referred to as emergency services unit. They were kind of in between patrol and SWAT. And they had these things issued to them. And we would generally have anywhere between 2 to 3 members of ESU on every shift. So, and on night shift, our evening shift overlapped with our midnight shift from 10 at night till 3 in the morning. So, especially during like bar closing time, you know, we could have anywhere between 4 and 6 of these things available to us. So you get like the quotes pulse nightclub style shooting. You know, everybody's responding in there. You're bringing in a tremendous amount of critical equipment. The wearers, again, are accessing the equipment in the outside pockets to treat their own casualties. And what it's intended to do is be able to distribute those individual throw kits either to other first responders or citizen interveners. And if you go back and look, whether it's Pulse, San Bernardino, the Las Vegas shooting, Aurora, whatever it is, go back and watch the news footage, and what you see are citizens that manage to make it through, you know, that situation, that are able to physically and psychologically engage, trying to render aid to their fellow man. And they're making, you know, bandages out of T-shirts and towels, and they're trying to improvise tourniquets out of belts. You know, they know what they need. This is a way to get that equipment in there, get it in their hands, and let them put it in play. You know, thanks to, you know, great programs like Stop the Bleed and things like that, there are more and more folks out there, military veterans, off-duty nurses, off-duty firefighters, you know, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts that have had some training. There is a lot of folks out there that know how to use this equipment. They just need to get their hands on it. So this is a good way for first responders, law enforcement, to be able to get mass quantities of this equipment into a critical incident quick and get it distributed.
Yeah, I thought
so. We call that our active response kit, our ARC.
Yeah, I thought this was really cool. So in the throw kit, there's a TQ, a compression dressing, some gauze, and a space blanket. Is that?
Yes, and gloves and some PPE. So again, it gets a lot of equipment into a scene quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And
that's pretty cool looking.
Yeah, it is. Do all the throw kits fit into the backpack, or what is it called?
They go to, there's a center chamber of the backpack. So there's 3 chambers, the big one down the middle that carries the throw kits, and then the 2 outer zipper pockets that have the equipment that the wearer is intended to access. And we, you know, again, kind of like I jokingly referred to the Elias bandages, the ShamWow, kind of jokingly refer to this as the Pez dispenser of trauma kits. You know, you just keep reaching in there and yanking out throw kits and handing them out. So that's what its intended purpose is, and it works very, very effectively at doing that.
Good stuff.
The other piece of gear that I wanted to bring up that is very effective in one of these types of situations is called a foxtrot litter. And that is one of the other pieces of equipment. In lieu of the 8 throw kits down the center of the ARC, we can swap that out and put a foxtrot litter down, or it's its own standalone piece of equipment. And if you've ever dealt with a military sked, very large rolled fiberglass patient evacuation platform, this is a very, very scaled down version of it. It's much smaller, much lighter weight. The restriction is you can't do vertical kilo operations with it, but as far as anchoring a patient into it and getting them off the X, the patient movement capabilities, that's what it's intended to do. There are 6 handles on the side, the traditional, okay, everybody grab a handle, 3, 2, 1 lift, 3, 2, 1 lower. That's what it's capable of doing. But if, you know, you're running out of resources and you're by yourself, or it's 1 or 2 rescuers and you've still got a patient that you need to move, you know, if that's what it's coming down to, and if you've ever tried to pick up a casualty either by yourself or with a buddy, that turns into a goat rope. All right. So what this is able to do is snap that casualty down into this thing, and there's a lanyard and a harness that unfurls from the front, and you put that over your shoulder, and you get about 3 or 4 yards out in front of the casualty, and you pull the casualty behind you. And it is amazing to see the look on people's faces in training when they see that they can move a patient by themselves for a considerable amount of distance.
It's priced really well too. I was just looking at the website.
A couple of the FAA required every 3-year mandatory mass casualty drills at the airport, right? Where they bring the little inflatable airplane out and the smoke is going, and usually there's local kids from either the high school or the community college theater department out there really getting their theater on, being the casualties. They're all moulaged up, right? It's a good exercise and a good opportunity to test systems, to test procedures, and to also test gear out. And on the 2 of those exercises that I participated in, the folks that were using the Foxtrot litter were able to bring 3 casualties to the casualty collection point for every one, where the teams were using just a standard backboard and that type of stuff. And it was 1 to 2 officers versus 4 to 6 rescuers having to use the backboard. So it's a very, very efficient. It's less fatiguing on the rescuer. So those same people that might need to take a knee and catch a breath can immediately turn and burn and go back in and get somebody else. So it's an awesome piece of gear. And the one claim to fame for that thing, which is a really cool story, is it was actually used to help rescue a climber off of Everest. In that capacity, with the Sherpas and everything like that, being able to carry big, bulky equipment is pretty much out of the question, but that was a piece of gear that somebody felt they could carry, and they actually used it and toted it up onto Everest and used it in a very successful rescue off of Everest.
That's pretty awesome. Speaking of that kind of stuff, I noticed TACMed saves on your website, which is basically a listing of kind of times that tactical medical solutions products were used to save lives and things like that, which I always enjoy kind of reading through that stuff.
We try to highlight that. We ask our customers, whether it's law enforcement or military, if they're willing to share stories with us to let us know. Sometimes we have to wait for, cases to close, and even then a lot of information is redacted, but the meat and potatoes of the story is conveyed to us, and we're able to share that, that an officer doing a traffic stop, a shooting happened, and a tourniquet was used to save somebody's life, or a bad multi-car crash was used, or a search and rescue type incident. So we try to be very proactive about reaching out and finding those instances and highlighting the work of the rescuers, not just what our equipment did. Absent that rescue, that equipment would just sit in a car. So it is about the equipment, but it is also about the people putting it in play and letting it do what it was intended to do, and that's help save lives.
Definitely.
And you guys have kits in South Carolina schools where we're from.
We do. That was the other aspect that I was going to bring up is the public access space. So again, going back to what we talked about earlier, the genesis of Tactical Medical Solutions was military medicine, supporting the special operations community, the normal regular troops that are out there. And then they branched out into the first responder space, law enforcement, fire, and EMS. As things have progressed, things are now at a time and a place where, public access is now a viable solution. Like we talked about there with the going back and looking at the news feeds of, these big critical incidents. Citizens know how to use things and know to get this equipment and put it in play. So now there's public access kits designed for schools, houses of worship, places of retail, places of transit, sporting venues. Again, anywhere where you're going to have high threat areas or just sheer numbers of people in one small space, you have to do a threat assessment and understand, hey, this is something that could potentially be impacted here. So yeah, most school districts around the country are implementing, going back and retrofitting schools with deterrent equipment, be it metal detectors, be it, up armored doors, camera systems, alarms, adding school resource personnel to every school. And I agree with all of that. But one of those factors is, all right, let's try to identify it and prevent it. Let's respond to it quickly and stop it. But we need better equipment in place to deal with the casualties when one of these things actually goes down. And the concept of public access is how we do that. And probably one of our most successful, most robust programs. We've had a lot of individual schools or an individual school district or one university, things like that. But as far as a all-encompassing programmatic response here in the state of South Carolina, we won the bid to be able to provide public access kits to all public schools here in the state of South Carolina. And that was done through a grant, through an HPP hospital preparedness grant. And again, that was housed and facilitated by South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control, is who implemented everything. And what that was able to do is fund 18,000 bleeding control kits. And they distributed those throughout every public school in South Carolina, dependent upon population. You know, not every school got 10 kits. Some got 10, some got 20, some got 30, depending upon the size of the school and the amount of students that were there. But 18,000 of these kits throughout every brick and mortar school in South Carolina. Only program like that in the United States to date. And that was phase one. Phase two involved going back and putting 6,000 of these same kits on every school bus in the state of South Carolina. So it's not just the brick and mortar that's covered, it's every yellow or white and green school bus, depending upon which county you live in, that's rolling in the state of South Carolina, has one of these kits in it. So that's a pretty amazing commitment by the state of South Carolina. And we were very, very humbled to be able to have been chosen to be the ones that got to implement it.
That's pretty cool. Like I appreciate that, since obviously this is my home state as well. So we've helped do some of the training for some of my local schools. We came in and started working with training schools, the teachers, all the staff. You know, whether you're a cook or you're a janitor or you're a teacher, you learned how to put a tourniquet on, how to wound pack, things like that. So we do. That was fun. You know, getting the school teachers in there. Sometimes they were a little squirmish, but we get them in there, making sure they're putting tourniquets on tight and learning how to wound pack. So you talked about the equipment, things like that, and you guys have started something new on your Instagram and Facebook page with the TACMed University. You started some training videos to try to help educate people.
Yes. So TACMed University, Tactical Medical Solutions has historically always had training videos posted to the website. And as you know, the company has grown and evolved, so has, I'm just going to say this bluntly, so has the quality of the video production. Okay. So we've actually got some really amazing videos out there that are product specific, that are tactic specific. And it's not just in-house people. We're bringing in some really, really high caliber people to help us produce some phenomenal videos. It's free of charge. All you have to do is register for it. If you go to our website and sign up for TACMed University, it gives you free access to that, and you're allowed to use that for your own personal gain and education. You're allowed to use it for in-service, however you see fit. We want people to not just have a product. We want them to have the knowledge to use that product. And going back to the public access kits, our traumatic line of public access kits actually has its own specific online training portal. And I know this is going to sound a little funny. It's kind of done in an, how do I describe it? An avatar cartoon-based format. And that's done intentionally with the understanding that I may be going into a school, I may be going into a house of worship, I may be going into a corporate environment, and that's not the same as if I'm going to Fort Bragg and training, you know, some special forces soldiers and things like that. You don't want to shock and awe and shut people down with necessarily, you know, videos and photos that are gory and scary. It conveys what to do. It conveys how to use the equipment without it being overly scary. I have a son who's 24 years old and in nursing school, and I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I've had her go through and watch the videos, and she loves them. And, you know, if we can teach Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts how to make splints and slings and all that kind of fun stuff, we can train them how to use this type of equipment as well. And it does it in a very appropriate, effective way. We just equipped the Miami Dolphins Hard Rock Stadium with our Traumatic public access kits ahead of the Super Bowl. And they've got 400 employees there on a daily basis. And we did some hands-on training for some of the lead personnel and the supervisors and things like that. But everyone there at that organization got access to that online training portal. Again, whether it's the ticket taker at the gate, or it is the maintenance worker, the person that does the grounds keeping at the grass, whoever it is in that facility, in that organization, got access to that training. Because it's one thing to check a block off on some form and say, yeah, we did something. But if people walk by and they have no idea what that white box on the wall is or how to use it, then what did we really accomplish? What did we really do? And I am a trainer at heart, as I mentioned earlier when we were doing our intro. I do believe that hands-on training is the standard that folks need to get, but sometimes just sheer numbers and logistics, that's hard to do. So this is an option to be able to get some training out there so that folks are better equipped and understand what that program is and how to put the equipment in play.
Very cool. That sounds awesome. I actually just signed up for it a few minutes ago for the TechMed Solutions University.
Yeah, and there's some really cool people that we're bringing in. Probably one of the ones that I thought was very, very cool. We brought in a nurse anesthetist a couple months ago to do an airway series, and that guy is very, very good. I encourage folks, all of the folks that we're bringing in now to do training, have their own very impressive background. We're bringing in canine specialists to do treatment of actual, canine dogs. We brought in a doctor to do a series in Spanish and things of that nature. So we're definitely thinking outside the box. We're trying to make those videos helpful and useful and impactful is the biggest thing.
Yeah, I love it. I can't wait to check it out. It's going to be pretty exciting. I think that's going to do it for our time today, Dan. It's been awesome and really cool to hear just about the history of that and just kind of how you got involved and to hear about the products. Well,
I appreciate it, guys. And you guys are doing a phenomenal job out there on your end. Every trade show I go to, trust me, everybody has heard of the Skinny Medic. So kudos to you guys and what you are doing. And we appreciate your support and whatever we can do to continue to support your efforts. Just let us know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate TechMed's supporting the Skinny Medic channel. Anytime I've asked for something to do a review or just need some extra equipment, you guys have always been very helpful with that. So I appreciate the support from you guys.
Absolutely. It's been our pleasure.
Remind people where they can find you. What's the website and any social media that you guys have?
Our website is www.tacmedsolutions.com. So TACMED solutions.com. And I'll be honest with you, I got to go back and figure out the Twitter hack and all of that kind of good stuff. I don't know it off the top of my head.
I'm sure they can find
so
it.
We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, and I'm sure Carolyn, our marketing person, will make sure that I know it by the end of the week.
Yeah, if you go on to Instagram, you go to TacMed_solutions. You can follow them on Instagram over there. They've got a great feed over there.
Yep, and Twitter is...
There you go. Well, thank you for bailing me out on that one.
Twitter is Tactical Medical, and YouTube and all that stuff. It's at the bottom of their website, so that's a great, easy way to find it too.
Perfect. I appreciate it, Dan. Thank you for coming on.
Not a problem, guys. I've enjoyed it, and look forward to hearing it.
Awesome. Thanks to everyone who's listening, and go check us out. Firearmsradio.tv is where you can find the Civilian Medical Podcast, but also iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all that stuff. It's out there, and we will talk to you in the next episode.
Find us and subscribe at civmedical.com.